So we're continuing where we left off with Brahma about to be bewildered by the astonishing behavior of Krishna with his cowherd boys. We were pointing out to you how we shouldn't neglect the in-betweens, the so-called gaps between various Leelas, because you find so much enrichment even there. Srimad Bhagavatam has 18,000 verses, approximately, depending on how you divide the Sanskrit verses. And it's a series of nested dialogues. One dialogue nested within another dialogue. So we're going to hear Sutta Goswami, who's explaining to the sages at Naiman Saranya, headed by Shaunak Rishi. He's explaining what he heard from Shukadeva and Parikshit. So he's going to be telling you how Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva are interacting, but sometimes he himself interjects with ecstasy. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam. You're being flooded from all angles with the literary incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, saturated with rasa. Bhagavatam teaches you not only to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but how to feel love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna's confidential aspects are introduced briefly, Srimati Radharani, and in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Radha-Krishna relationship is fully presented. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're looking at Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 12, the Aghasura chapter. We'll do text 40 and probably 41 and 42, because text 40 and 41 don't have any Bhaktivedanta purport. I lost my place. Shri Krishna Chaitanya. All right. Shri Sutta Vacha. Itam Dvija Yadava Deva Datta. Shutva Swaratush Charitam Vichitram. Prapacha Bhuyo Pitareva Punyam. Vyasakim Yan Nirgrahita Cheta. Itam Dvija Yadava Deva Datta. Shutra Saratush Charitam Vachitam. Prapacha Bhuyo Pitareva Punyam. Vyasakim Yan Nirgrahita Cheta. Itam Dvija Yadava Deva Datta. Shutra Saratush Charitam Vachitam. Prapacha Bhuyo Pitareva Punyam. Vyasakim Yan Nirgrahita Cheta. Vaishnavis. Sri Sutta Vacha. Sri Sutta Goswami spoke to the assembled saints at Naimisharanya. Ittam, in this way. Dvija, O learned Brahmanas. Yadava Deva Datta. Maharaja Parikshit. Or Maharaja Yudhishthira, who was protected by Yadava Deva. Krishna. Sruta, hearing. Saratu, of Krishna, who was his savior within the womb of his mother. Uttara, Charitam, the activities. Vichitram, all wonderful. Prapracha, inquired. Bhuya api, even again. Tadeva, such activities. Punyam, which are always full of pious activities. Shinvatam Sakata Krishna Punya Sravana Kirtana. To hear about Krishna is always pious. Vyasakim unto Shukadeva Goswami. Yat, because. Nigrahita Cheta. Pritchett Maharaj had already become steady in hearing about Krishna. Translation. Sri Sutta Goswami said, O learned saints, the childhood pastimes of Sri Krishna are very wonderful. Maharaj Parikshit, after hearing about those pastimes of Krishna, who had saved him in the womb of his mother, became steady in his mind, and again inquired from Shukadeva Goswami to hear about those pious activities. So we'll talk about this, and then the verses coming up. Text 42 will have the purport by Srila Prabhupada. So where are we? As we said, Bhagavatam is nested dialogues. So you're hearing the dialogue between Shukadeva Goswami and Pritchard Maharaj, and then you realize that's being relayed by Sutta Goswami in his own dialogue with the sages of Naimisharanya, headed by Shonaka Rishi. So this is Sutta Goswami, and then you're going to go back to hearing Sutta Goswami saying what Pritchard Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami are talking about. But you're hearing now from Sutta Goswami. This is how the Bhagavatam gets sweeter and sweeter. The more you talk about it, the more it's handed down in an authorized way from spiritual master to disciple, the sweeter the taste becomes. You don't know anything like that in the material world. That the more it's repeated, the sweeter it gets. The more it's repeated, the more gossip is repeated, the more deadly and poisonous it becomes. As those who spend their time in the wrong way on social media know. But back to the Lila. By this process, or more particularly by the presentation that is being made, nested dialogues, you're not being distracted. You're getting the full 360-degree experience. What Pritchard's going through, hearing about Krishna, what Shukadeva Goswami is going through, talking about Krishna, what Sutta Goswami is going through, repeating what Pritchard and Shukadeva are going through, and then you are the audience. So things just get sweeter and sweeter. And that's going to be a theme we'll talk about more in the next class. How the mark of someone who's restoring their spiritual health in bhakti is that the pastimes and the holy name of Krishna appear to you, taste to you sweeter and sweeter. So we talked about the end of the Aghasura Lila, the slaying of Aghasura, and how Brahma himself was astonished by all the celebrations going on near his planet. And unseen by others, remember, he came to Braj to see what's all the celebration about. And he was astonished by what he saw. Even the cowherd boys were astonished, but not in the same way as Brahma. Brahma's astonishment was in terms of, this is inconceivably powerful. I am the supreme creator, but what's going on here? Whereas the cowherd boys, they just embraced Krishna. Oh, you saved us from this demon who tried to kill us. You saved us. And then other cowherd boys would say, we told you Krishna would take care of that demon. Why did you have fear? So because of the slaying of Aghasura, the cowherd boys' lunch was late. In Braj Lila, lunchtime among Krishna and his associates serves as a way to change the pastimes, especially when Asuras attack. Krishna and his boyfriends are playing one way, then Asuras attack, and it's a scene change, and they start playing another way. So in that way, even the attacks of Asuras serve as a theatric purpose. What about the cowherd boys' lunch? It was delayed, as we said. How did they come to have lunch in the forest in the first place? Mother Yashoda, Kavi Karnapur tells us, objected in the morning. Krishna announced, we're going to have picnics in the forest. And Mother Yashoda said, no, you will not. Why do you want to eat in the forest when I have so many tasty preparations to serve you at home? And Krishna put his foot down and said, Mother, I'll take shelter of God, and in that way, I'm not going to do what you say. So what could Mother Yashoda do? What do you think she did? She went into her kitchen and prepared such an astonishing variety and amount of foodstuffs that you couldn't imagine. Oh. To taste that prasad from Mother Yashoda. The descriptions are so, I don't want to get you thinking about breakfast too early. She made so much. And the cowherd boys were worried. They were saying to Krishna, how are we going to carry all this into the forest? And Krishna assured them, don't worry, don't worry. Take it all, boys. So they did it cowherd boy style. They had a stick on their shoulders with parcels of prasad hanging on each end. And in that way they all marched into the forest. But then, you know, they came upon Aghasura. And then the slaying of Aghasura happened. You might be curious, what happened to their lunch? Jiva Goswami gives two possibilities. And remember, Krishna's Leelas are eternal. He doesn't have to do everything exactly the same way. So before you ask me the question, why are there two possibilities for what happened to the cowherd boys' lunch? Just bear in mind that Krishna is the supreme artist, so he variegates the various details of his Leelas. So, some say that the cowherd boys, before they marched into Aghasura's mouth, they put their sticks with the lunches hanging from both ends, put them aside. Some say they hung them from trees. Others say, even though they still carried their lunch with them when they marched into Aghasura's mouth, Krishna protected the lunch prasad. So take your pick. Everything is possible with Krishna. So upon the killing of Aghasura, we talked about that the other day, how Krishna made a theatric production. He had the spirit soul indicated by an effulgence. Stay in the sky. The departed Aghasura. Stay in the sky until Krishna and the cowherd boys emerged from the mouth of Aghasura. And then everyone could see this bright light merge into Krishna's body. Of course, as we discussed the other day, that was not the end of it all for Aghasura. He was transiting. He was going to Vaikuntha to have the same form as Lord Narayan, Sarupa Mukti. Now, what were the cowherd boys' reactions seeing this? We talked about the demigods in the higher planets astonished, playing musical instruments, singing, dancing, reciting shlokas. But what about the cowherd boys? They saw, yes, Aghasura has attained liberation, but they didn't ever think that Krishna was the cause of that. Why? Because Krishna is their friend. Sometimes the cowherd boys speculate. Who is this Krishna? Who is our friend, really? Maybe he's a devata. Maybe he's a demigod. But you know what that means. If he's a demigod, so are we, because we're just as good as him. And he's just as good as us. So they saw the liberation of Aghasura, the bright effulgence in the sky, which hovered there for a while, waited for Krishna to come out of the mouth of Aghasura, and then of Aghasura's dead body, and then merged with Krishna's body. They saw that, and they knew Aghasura had achieved liberation, but they didn't connect 1 + 1 = 2, that Krishna had arranged that, Krishna had done that. Because Krishna is their cowherd boyfriend. He's their playmate for mock fighting, for dancing, for singing. So lunch is delayed. And they are in the forest. And Krishna points out, look at this spot on the bank of the Yamuna. This is a perfect place for our pastimes. Clean sand, like powdered camphor. Everyone has seen camphor before? Sand like powdered camphor. And the trees are forming a canopy overhead to protect us from the heat. And the birds, they're not disturbing, but they're singing sweetly. And the flowers, lotus flowers, are spreading their aroma everywhere. And plus, the petals of the lotus flower will be wonderful for lunch plates. And right nearby is the Jamuna River, so sweet for drinking, not only for us, but for the cows and calves too. This spot is perfect for our Lilas, our pastimes. It's enough space for dancing, enough space for fighting each other, and it's enough space for sitting in rows for taking lunch. So the cowherd boys immediately chimed in. Yes, yes, yes. You have spoken very nicely. It's time for a picnic. And we are hungry. That means you are hungry because we're all equal. It's cowherd boy mathematics. We're just as good as Krishna. He's just as good as us. If we're hungry, he's hungry. So they all sat down in rows. The most intimate associates were seated closest to Krishna. Everyone else sat in concentric circles of rows. But the amazing thing is that each cowherd boy thought, Krishna is looking directly at me. Others only see him from their side or their back, but he's directly in front of my face. This is how Krishna satisfies everyone. Sometimes we wonder, how will Krishna ever relate to little old me? He has so many devotees. Who am I? But each cowherd boy, even though the inner circle cowherd boys were sitting close to Krishna, each cowherd boy felt Krishna is directly in front of my face, looking at me, not so much to the others. So each cowherd boy, no matter where he sat, had the feeling of exclusivity. I am Krishna's friend, and Krishna is my friend. So they're having a wonderful time eating. You see, on their way to the picnic spot after the killing of Aghasura, they were sporting with each other, stealing each other's lunches. Kavi Karnapur calls it the festival of stealing. They would grab a cowherd boy's lunch and then throw it to another cowherd boy. The original owner would try to get the lunch packet back, and they would throw it yet to another cowherd boy. And they would do things like take the lunch packet after throwing it here, throwing it there. They would place it at the base of a tree with thorns and ants. And the original owner would cry, and then they would give it back to him. Sometimes before giving the lunch back to the original owner, they would take some out and then put some of theirs in. So at the end of all this, everyone is happy and satisfied. That's the nature of Vrindavan. Everyone is satisfied. Even when they cry and they seem to be in agony, it is all Satchidananda, transcendental. Eternity, full knowledge and full bliss. That's why Sanatana Goswami explains in Brihad Bhagavatamrita that when you talk about distress, you must understand that even the distress of Goloka Vrindavan stands on the head of the happiness in Ayodhya or Vaikuntha. Try to figure that out. So they're having lunch, and they're offering from there. First of all, where do they put their lunch on? They have various options. Lotus leaves, they put their lunch prasad on that, using lotus leaves as their plates. Tree bark, flowers, in their hands, on their thighs, on their chadar. You say, ooh, that's not clean. But in Goloka Vrindavan, everything is clean. Everything is suci. And Krishna is sitting there like the whirl of the lotus flower. And Krishna has his flute tucked in on his right side, and a bugle and a stick for herding cows on the left side. And his waist is described as being so attractive. Just Krishna's waist, what to speak of his face. So Krishna doesn't have to go to a fitness center in order to have, how do they say, get ripped? Just his waist, small, compact, with his flute on one side, buffalo horn, and stick on the other side. So what a scene. And this is what starts to contribute further to Brahma's bewilderment. Is this really my Lord? Let me make a test. Brahma got bewildered by the intimacy of the lunchtime Lila on the bank of the Yamuna. So he's going to interfere with Krishna's Lila. Let me make a test. Let me see. So the Bhagavatam describes that just as a glowworm has similarity to the sun, they both show light. Similarly, Brahma has similarity with Krishna. They're both extraordinarily powerful. But the similarity ends there when you look at the quantity of the power. Just like look at so the glowworm lights up, and that's right, they have a cave famous for glowworms here in New Zealand, Waitomo or something like that. Yes. So if you take your kids there, you can tell them this example, that compare the light of the glowworms to the light of the sun. They both are equal in that they both show light, but the quantity is so different. So both Brahma and Krishna have mystic power, but Krishna is Yogeshvara, the master of those who have mystic powers. So there's no comparison. And that's what Brahma will find out. So we'll go to the next text. But wait. First, we'll talk about this statement that Parikshit Maharaj became steady in his mind and again inquired from Shukadeva Goswami. His mind is steady, the acharyas point out, because of the prema in his heart. Even speaking ordinarily, love makes steadiness. That's why on the material plane, people aspire for love. They hope for a steady condition of exchanges. So Parikshit Maharaj's mind is steady because his heart, the acharyas say, is saturated with prema. And that allows him to hear Shukadeva Goswami continuously. And so he's going to inquire from Shukadeva Goswami about certain aspects of what just happened in terms of the onset of the Brahma Vimohana Lila. And that's going to bring about a whole explanation by Shukadeva Goswami of that Brahma Vimohana Lila. So we're going to hear what Pritchett Maharaj is noting. And it's important to him because he's known as Yadava Deva. Particularly, the Sanskrit says Yadava Deva Datta. Maharaj Pritchett. Oh, it can also refer to Maharaj Yudhisthira, who was protected by Yadava Deva Krishna. So Krishna protected Pritchett in the womb and gave him to his mother Uttara and the Pandavas as the heir to the Pandavas. Similarly, Krishna gives himself to devotees. The acharyas point out that parallel. Krishna gave Pritchett Maharaj to his mother and to the Pandavas. Krishna gives himself to devotees. So focus on the consciousness of Pritchett Maharaj. This should inspire us because this is what we would like, this is the direction we want to go in. Steadiness in hearing about Krishna, steadiness in chanting about Krishna. And it's especially important because this is the only way that Sukadev's suffering in separation will be healed, by talking about Krishna, hearing about Krishna. So now we'll go to text 41. Sri Rajovacha Brahman Kalantara Kritam Takkaliyam Katam Bhavet Yakomare Hari Kritam Jagupal Gandate Baka. Maharaj Pritchett inquired, "O great sage, how could things done in the past have been described as being done at the present? Lord Sri Krishna performed this pastime of killing Aghasura during his Kaumara age. How then, during his Palganda age, could the boys have described this incident as having happened recently?" Not only happened recently, but happened today, when actually it was a year ago. So this is Pritchett Maharaj investigating Shukadeva Goswami's account. What's going on with the chronology? Often I point out that actually in the Bhagavatam, chronology is generally not so important. What's most important is the rasa, the flow of rasa. So sometimes overpowered by ecstasy in speaking Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami will put Lilas out of order. So from the material point of view, that's considered a great mistake. Because this comes before that and that comes before that. But Krishna's pastimes are eternal. And the most important thing is ecstatic love of Krishna. So sometimes Shukadeva loses the plot, which in material life, that's considered a great fault. You say to someone who's who's just out of it, "Oh, you really lost the plot." But for Shukadeva, that's the greatest compliment for him. He loses the plot and then he picks it up again. All because of ecstasy. We don't know what is true happiness. We don't know what is ecstatic satisfaction. But by hearing Shukadeva speak to Pritchett Maharaj and Pritchett Maharaj's queries, and then the whole dialogue has been being repeated by Sutta Goswami to the sages at Naimisranya, everything's becoming sweeter and sweeter and you never get to the end of it. You never get to the end of the sweetness. You never get to the bottom, so to speak, of Krishna's pastimes. So Pritchard Maharaj is wondering what happened in 1 year. And that leads to, of course, Lord Brahma's interference. So we'll go to text 42. Tad bruhi me mahayogin Pradam kautu halam guru Nunameta dedeva Maya bhavati nanyata. O greatest yogi, my spiritual master, kindly describe why this happened. I am very much curious to know about it. I think that it was nothing but another illusion due to Krishna. So first of all, he's addressing his spiritual master, Shukadeva Goswami, as Mahayogi, the greatest yogi, letting you know that bhakti is the top of the yoga ladder, the culmination of all the yoga systems. So therefore, Shukadeva Goswami deserves the title Mahayogi, not just someone who is doing Ashtanga yoga, developing mystic powers, postures, breathing exercises. Mahayogi means one who has that ultimate connection with Krishna. Kindly describe why this has happened. Things that happened a year ago are being described as if they happened today by the cowherd boys when they enter Vrindavan. And of course, you know what happened. Brahma, looking at the lunchtime situation, because the cowherd boys had left their cows munching grass. They were assured the calves would all be happy munching grass near the Yamuna River. And so they all sat down with Krishna to have lunch, as we described. And then they noticed, they're gone. The calves and cows are gone. They wanted to get up from lunch because the cows are their livelihood. The cows are so dear to them, not simply as income generators, but just... And Krishna is Gopal, the protector of the cows. So Krishna told them, no. Don't get up. I will go find the cows and calves. So Krishna searching for the cows and calves is very interesting. Doesn't he already know where they are? Doesn't he already know what's going on? Doesn't he know what Brahma has done? But this is Krishna relishing the pastime. In Vrindavan, as we explained the other day, the most important reality is madhurya, sweetness. So Krishna holds his Aishvarya, his opulence powers in reserve, demonstrates them for a moment, and then pulls them back. So he's into it. He's into the whole Lila. Where are the cows? Where are the calves? While he's looking, his whole effulgence, his effulgence is illuminating the whole forest. You have to understand the role illumination plays in Braj. They don't need electricity. Even when the cowherd boys are taking their lunch, they have tiffins, containers for their lunch, which are effulgent. What to speak of Krishna wandering through the forest looking for the cows and calves? His effulgence is illuminating the whole forest. So he looks on the ground, which is all fresh grass. You would expect that he would see hoof prints, right? And track the cows down in that way. He didn't see any hoof prints. He's starting to wonder, what's going on here? Cows leave hoof prints. There are no hoof prints in the grass. And while he's wondering like that, he goes back to the lunch site, and what does he see? Cowherd boys are gone too. Krishna's momentarily perplexed and distressed. What's happening? What's happening? You hate to be lost in uncertainty and not be able to explain a situation. Mundane psychologists of happiness say that we talked about the other day how significance is an important part of mundane happiness. You have to feel that your life is worth something and has some value for someone. You want to feel that your life has significance for the universe in some kind of way. So the other is called cohesiveness. You want to be able to fit all the events and all the happenings of your life into a context that makes sense. Well, I understand why that happened, and I understand why this will happen. This is everyone supplying their cohesive context, which is an essential ingredient of mundane happiness. But Krishna's happiness is not mundane, nor is his distress mundane. Everything is enjoyable for the Supreme Enjoyer. What happened? Oh no, the cows are gone. And mystically, there are no footprints indicating where they went. And now I go back to the lunch site, the cowherd boys are gone. What's going on? And then, of course, Krishna solves the problem. Oh, Brahma. So Brahma has shown his mystic power, and Krishna will outclass Brahma infinitely by his own mystic power. You know what Krishna does. He expands himself into Vishnu Tattva cowherd boys and Vishnu Tattva cows. And they all go back home to Braj, to Vrindavan. So just visualize the scene. Krishna is playing his flute as usual upon the return home. He's playing his flute, and as usual, the cowherd boys are frolicking and dancing. But these are all Vishnu Tattva cowherd boys dancing to Krishna's flute. So this is the start, the very start of Brahma's bewilderment. So as you know, for 1 year of Earth time, the cows were Vishnu Tattva, the cowherd boys were Vishnu Tattva. And then, when the Lila was over, the original cowherd boys return, the original cows return, and they all think, we just left in the morning. You know why Balaram wasn't there when the cowherd boys were stolen or when they were returned. On that day that they were stolen, Balaram had been retained at home by his mother Rohini. Some say it was his birthday, others say astrologers had suddenly intervened as Balaram was accompanying Krishna to the forest. Astrologers said, wait. We need him at home today. We need to perform some yagyas to appease the planets. So Balaram wasn't there a year ago, and the same thing happened on the day the cowherd boys and cows returned. He was held at home. Of course, there's a whole big part of the Lila, which I love to talk about on Balaram's appearance day. The various stages of Krishna removing Balaram's bewilderment. There are about 4 stages. But for now, we're hearing about Pritchett Maharaj appealing to Shukadeva Goswami. Mahayogi, why is this 1-year gap of missing time? And why is it that the cowherd boys think that the killing of Aghasura happened this morning, their morning, of that day, when actually it happened a year ago? I'm very much curious to know about it. So this is your chance to focus. Pritchett Maharaj is saying, I'm curious about something, so we should be curious about what he's curious about. Not that, well, who cares what you're curious about? We're doing our own thing. Mahajana yena gatasapanta. You follow in the footsteps of the great souls, and then gradually things become more clear for you. Sometimes devotees ask, how do we learn how to give class? How do we learn how to preach? So I remember during my Los Angeles days, which Archita Prabhu always speaks about, I had the great fortune of filing all Srila Prabhupada's letters, both letters to him and letters from him. I've explained that story many times, how this huge box of letters was brought in by the BBT director. At that time, I was living across from Jayadvaita Das Brahmachari, now Jayadvaita Swami. He was the main editor. I was the copy editor, as well as I became the production manager unofficially and then officially. So I saw so many letters written by devotees to Srila Prabhupada. How do we learn how to give class? How do we learn how to preach? And each time Prabhupada would answer the letters in the same way. He would say, cram my purports, repeat them verbatim, and then gradually your own style will develop. So there's following in the footsteps combined with individuality. Cram my purports, repeat them, and gradually your own way will develop, your own style. So it's important for us what Pritchett Maharaj is curious about. And we should take that very seriously. And he says, I think what was going on was nothing but another illusion due to Krishna. What he's asking about, the acharyas point out, is confidential. He's basically saying to Shukadeva Goswami that don't hold back. Explain this confidential detail to me because I'm a real disciple. And when someone is a real disciple, the spiritual master has his duty to reveal to such a sincere disciple. So this is what the acharyas are pointing out is Pritchett Maharaj's correct assumption. I'm asking you, what happened? It must be some kind of potency of Krishna. And more particularly, it can't be Mahamaya. It can't be the external potency that's bewildering everyone here. Because Mahamaya, the external potency, cannot influence Krishna's associates. So there must be Yoga Maya at work, the internal potency acting to produce Krishna's pleasure without Krishna even having to think about it. Krishna has a particular aspect of Yoga Maya called Lila Shakti that arranges his pastimes so Krishna doesn't have to think about it. So Pritchett Maharaj is presenting himself to Shukadeva Goswami as a qualified disciple. I'm entitled, he's humbly saying, I'm entitled to ask this question. And In other words, and Guru Maharaj, you are supposed to answer. And he's right. He's not being presumptuous. He's not being demanding. He's showing you the process of spiritual realization. So he's very curious, not ordinarily curious. So you might think, what's the big deal? All right, it happened a year ago, and it didn't really happen on the very day. But by following the line of thought of Pritchard Maharaj's curiosity, the whole pastime opens up for you in a deeper way. So please understand that the Mahamaya, the illusory energy that troubles us so much, doesn't affect Krishna's personal associates. And Pritchard Maharaj knew that. It can't be that Maya that takes away all discriminating ability. It's got to be Krishna's personal potency. Now remember, Yoga Maya operates in two places only. Who knows? In the topmost portion of the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan, and in Krishna's pastimes, his personal pastimes when he comes to the material world. Otherwise, Vaikuntha, no Yoga Maya. Yoga Maya is for the sake of Krishna's pleasure, arranging happenings, arranging perceptions. Just like the cowherd boys, covered by Yoga Maya, never think Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though they sometimes see him do inconceivable things. Sometimes they start speculating, as we already said, could he be this, could he be that? But then, he's our friend Krishna. The cowherd men in Vrindavan, the older ones, they start speculating sometimes, especially after Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill. Could he be the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Could he be Narayan? Gargarishi said something like that at the name-giving ceremony, that this child could be equal to Narayan. But wait a minute. When he doesn't get his way, he cries. When he's hungry, he lets you know. When he's thirsty, he lets you know. How could that be God? And generally, Krishna then covers the whole scene with his Yoga Maya, and everyone just stops speculating, metaphysical, theological speculation. And anyway, whatever Krishna is, we have to take care of him, the older cowherd men think. So Pritchard Maharaj knows this is not ordinary Maya at work for Krishna's associates. Even Brahma was outclassed, and Brahma has bewildering energy. He's got mystic potency. So Pritchett is convinced, Master, you have the highest bhakti. You're a Mahayogi. You know everything about the Lord's actions. So Shukadeva Goswami could reply, well, this is secret. This is top drawer. This is confidential. So that's why Pritchard Maharaj implies, for a sincere disciple, nothing should be hidden. Obviously, this is not Mahamaya at work. But we know that one of Krishna's potencies is at work here. All right, any questions? Yes.
Well, you mentioned that Yoga Maya is only present in Goloka Vrindavan and the Krishna manifests his pastimes on this planet. So my question is, what is the energy that the residents of Vaikuntha are under?
It's the spiritual energy, but they are fully aware of the majesty and power of Lord Narayan. Whereas in Goloka Vrindavan, the awareness of Krishna's associates is covered by Yoga Maya. Even they see something, as I said, they see Krishna do something wonderful. Still, they can't add 1 + 1 = 2. Like the cowherd boys, when they saw Aghasura's effulgence hovering in the sky. Remember I explained that you just saw the effulgence. You didn't see the spiritual form. Generally, you can't even see the effulgence, but Krishna made an exception. You can see the effulgence of the spirit soul, indicating it's there, but you still couldn't see the spiritual form of Aghasura. So the cowherd boys saw that effulgence hovering in the sky and then waiting for Krishna to emerge from Aghasura, emerge from his dead body, the spirit soul merged into Krishna's body. The cowherd boys saw that. He's got liberation! But they never considered that Krishna had done that. That's the difference, because of the Yogamaya covering, which enhances Krishna's pleasure. Krishna doesn't want his personal associates thinking he's God. That ruins all the fun. He wants to sport and dance and romance. I often gave the example, a mundane example, but just to give you some insight. Famous celebrities, for example, Bill Gates. He's known to sometimes put on a disguise and just go out into the city of Seattle and just go to a pub or go to some gathering place and just be treated like he's like everyone else. So Krishna doesn't want to be worshipped all the time, as you'll read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 4. Oh, those Vedic hymns. Enough of that. I'd rather hear my fiancés chastise me. Don't try to imitate that. You don't want to hear that. Anything else? Yes. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev. Does that mean Lord Chaitanya's associates are also covered by Yogamaya?
Sometimes they know he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sometimes not. According to Lord Chaitanya's desires. Just like Kolavecha Sridhar, an eternal associate of Lord Chaitanya. He apparently, externally, is so poor, he lives in a shack with holes in the roof, and he's wearing rags. And he's chanting all night, loudly, and the neighbors think he's so poor, he's undergoing hunger pangs. He doesn't have enough food. He's chanting in pure ecstasy. So he had a stand for selling. You call that a stand here? A table. All right. Like a book. You have book tables for the Sankirtan Marathon. He had a banana cup table. Cups made of banana leaves. Extremely low-priced item. You couldn't get more of a low-priced item than that. Everyone in Navadvip, in the Navadvip Mandal, everyone knew Kolavecha Sridhar only charges a fair price the first time you ask him what's the price. Whereas everyone knows in India, first price is always inflated, very, very high. But Kolavecha Sridhar had that reputation. First price is the fair price. So Nimai Mahaprabhu in his youthful years would come by the banana cup table and how much? Kolavecha Sridhar would say the price. No, you're just being exorbitant. This price is so high. And Kolavecha Sridhar would just protest. Everyone knows I only quote the fair price. With 50% of my income, I worship the Ganga. With the other 50%, I try to maintain my shack and my rags. No, you're overcharging. Sometimes Mahaprabhu would then just resort to grabbing banana cups and just going away without paying. And Kolaveja Sridhar would grab him, holding on to him and wondering, why am I feeling such ecstasy? And Lord Chaitanya would tell him, you are a rich man. I know it. You are extraordinarily wealthy. You're hiding. I know that you're a rich man. Rich man? I'm just a banana cup seller. I'm penniless. You are the wealthiest man. What was Lord Chaitanya referring to? His bhakti. Later, when Lord Chaitanya desired, Kolavecha Sridhar would see during the Mahaprakash, the 24 hours of Lord Chaitanya, revealing his majesty, his opulence. Kolavecha Sridhar would see that. But for now, he's wondering, this Nimai is causing so much mischief. I'm holding him to prevent him from stealing my banana cups. Why am I feeling such ecstatic love? That's one example of countless. Anything else? Yes.
What's the best way to come to the steadiness platform?
Steadiness in sadhana, as Archana Prabhu has been emphasizing. Steadiness in sadhana, no matter what ashram you're in. We'll have an initiation, tomorrow? That's one kind of vow. Today is a marriage, another kind of vow. So how can you become steady without maintaining your vows? So that's the first step. Vows give you spiritual strength. The example I often give is, on a fast day, your stomach may be rumbling, oh, I'm hungry, but you know it's a fast day. On Janmashtami or Gaur Purnima, you see the children eating, and you think, oh, if I could eat also. But can't eat until midnight or moonrise. So vows help you in that way, to be steady. As soon as you consider your chanting to be optional, you're chanting your rounds according to namvrat, according to vow. As soon as you consider that to be optional, you have no solid ground under your feet. And then all kinds of excuses flood your mind. Well, you see, I really want to chant my rounds, but this happened and that happened and that happened. Tomorrow I will. Tomorrow, of course, same thing. Oh, no. This happened, that happened. The next day I will chant. Or here's a good one. Gurudev, I've kept track of all the rounds I missed. Well, why did you miss them? But I kept track of all the ones I missed. Anyone heard that one? So steadiness begins with steadiness in fulfilling our vows. If you're looking for an excuse, you'll be flooded with excuses. Don't consider it optional. Just like you don't consider breathing and eating optional. Now, the steadiness of Pritchard Maharaj, as we said, is beyond the sadhana stage. The prem in his heart is making his hearing steady. When you love someone, you love to hear about that person. Right? So because of his prem, that's what steadies his mind. But in the sadhana stage, we need to follow vows, regulations, so that our mind becomes steady. But as we advance, gradually the heart takes over, and we're advancing toward the higher stages of bhakti, and so therefore that steadies the mind. Ultimately, love conquers all, but we don't know what real love is. We want to find out. Yes. Wait for the microphone, please.
It seems like you just spoke on this topic, but what is the difference between a real disciple and a false disciple?
As I will explain, as always, tomorrow at the initiation yajna, real initiation is in the heart. It may happen before the ceremony, during the ceremony, after the ceremony, or never at all. A real disciple has discipline. Bhakti is yoga, the highest yoga. Yoga means discipline, mind and sense control for the pleasure of Krishna, for the sake of engaging in Krishna's service. I'll say something, and I'm sure the particular family member who would hear this would not hear this, actually, but one of my illustrious material family members, huge position in the material world. I was talking to him, and we were talking about discipline, sense control, and so he said, even in a super high position as he has, he was saying, if I could be celibate, I could do so much more. And then his wife was there. She said, but you can't. She knows. But he had that realization. All his successes, I won't enumerate them. But he understood if I could just control my mind and senses, control that energy, I could do much more. So the disciplines of bhakti allow you to go on serving Krishna and to increase your service. So the main problem with the Western world is that it glorifies non-discipline. It looks at discipline as debilitating, as injurious. That's why, as Archita Prabhu was saying, you have to be careful what psychological advice you take. Sometimes you have to be careful about what advice from devotees you take, because devotees are on different levels. I remember one devotee amongst us needed to have some adjustment made in his psychology due to traumas from the past. And he went to a psychologist who told him, you're a Hare Krishna, aren't you? Well, if I followed those 4 rules, I'd be bewildered too. So that is the Western world in a nutshell. Peace comes when you let your senses go. This is the struggle. We have this concoction that's dominating our mind that if I just let my senses go, if I just let out the anger, the greed, the lust, there'll be fulfillment, there'll be peace. Never happens. Never, ever happens. So it's a question of how many lifetimes we have to wait to realize that. As Prahlad Maharaj says, Tripyanti neha, you'll never be satisfied. Kripana bahudukha bhaja. The kripanas, those who are squandering their human form of life, they never learn. They're never satisfied, even though what they're doing keeps bringing them distress after distress. But you notice, we don't focus on the distress, right? We focus on the magic of the moment. Yeah, well, the distress is over here, and then over here is the magic of the moment. But what does Bhagavatam do? It puts them both together. The magic of the moment brings distress. And we say, nope. Distress is one thing, and the magic of the moment is another. So we make a total split in our mind. This is the Western world. They can't see the connection between uncontrolled anger, greed, and lust, and all the violence in the world. Why is the world so violent? Why are human beings massacring each other? Why are we destroying the environment? They can't see. Basically, it's all due to lust, anger, greed, which further deepens your bodily attachment. There's moha, illusion, then mahamoha. The first illusion is you think you're the body. And then mahamoha means you start trading, you start interacting based on that misconception, which intensifies the moha, therefore mahamoha. And that's the story, that's the history of this world. Political leaders stir up the anger of the people. Sooner or later it happens everywhere, even in placid New Zealand. It can very well happen. Your problems are all because of that other group. And it's all right to hate them. That's what political leaders are doing all over the world. It's the migrants, or it's this minority group, or it's that group, or this group who has all the financial power. They're causing the problems. Identify them based on their body. Step number one. Step number two, it's okay to hate them. And what do the people say? Kijai! Okay, this is real human life. Same old thing again and again, century after century. Just like in Australia, just as New Zealand, Australia last year had a record amount of migrants from abroad coming to live in Australia, just as in New Zealand. But then some politicians in Australia, as it'll happen in New Zealand too, they're already started to rumble. Wait a minute. The reason why we have sky-high housing prices is because all the migrants are coming and taking the properties, and the Aussies can't afford the houses now. So our problems are caused by the immigrants. That's the next step here. As the housing prices are now, in case you don't know, it's practically impossible for a young person in their 20s to have their own home unless you inherit from your parents, either a home or a cash from your parents. You're not going to be able to afford your own house. What's supposed to be the right of every genuine, upstanding citizen of Western civilization to own your own home. It's not going to happen unless you have those exceptional circumstances. The banks, they want 20% deposit out of you, right? They want 20%. How, as a young person, can you save that money when what? You're paying sky-high rent. You're trapped. The banks say, no, you don't have enough down payment. How are you going to ever accumulate funds for a down payment when you're paying sky-high rent? You're trapped. So sooner or later, you're going to get angry and look for someone to blame. And there'll be some politicians who will stir that up. Same old story, century after century. Body consciousness. Yes.
Gurudev, I was wondering that if during that year that the cowherd boys were taken away, did Krishna, because of Brahma's action, was Krishna's enjoyment impaired? Or was he still able to relish that relationship with them even though they weren't there?
I knew someone was going to ask this. Brahma actually never stole the real cows and cowherd boys. He had illusory forms. The real cows and cowherd boys were somewhere else by Krishna's mystic arrangement, and an expansion of Krishna stayed with them so they wouldn't be lonely. You want to know the fine print. But Brahma, just like Ravana couldn't touch the real Sita, Brahma couldn't touch the real cowherd boys. But this is all Krishna's bewilderment. So Brahma had illusory cowherd boys and cows stashed in a cave. Whereas the real cows and cowherd boys were asleep by Krishna's mystic powers somewhere else. And so they wouldn't get lonely, as I said. Krishna stayed with them in an expansion form. And then when the Brahma Vimohana, the bewilderment of Lord Brahma was over, those original cowherd boys and cows woke up, so to speak, from mystic slumber and marched back to Vrindavan, as if Aghasura was killed this morning, not a year ago. Yes.
We hear that when Krishna expanded himself, he expanded in Vishnu Tattva, but yet when the residents of Vrindavan were interacting with him, they interacted with the expansions as if they were Krishna. So, and then when Brahma saw the expansions, he saw Vishnu Tattva.
They interacted as if they are the original, their own sons, their own cows, not Vishnu Tattva. But they began treating these Vishnu expansions like they were like they were Krishna, but they weren't conscious of that. Balaram was starting to catch on, like they're loving these cows and boys just like they love Krishna, but they were treating them, in their mind, they're treating them like, this is my son, or the cows thinking, this is my calf. So they weren't thinking this is Krishna, but what was going on is they're loving and caring for these expansions, like they always wanted to care for Krishna. The mothers were always thinking, the mothers in Braj were thinking, oh, Mother Yashoda, if Krishna were my son, I would love him just like you love him. So Krishna gave them the opportunity. But they weren't thinking, now we are loving Krishna. Now I'm loving my son. Because Krishna expanded himself into Vishnu Tattva forms that each assumed the individuality, characteristics, and mood of the original cowherd boys and cows. So the mothers thought, it's my son as always. But outsiders could see that they were loving their son just as they loved Krishna, who's the heart of their heart. But they were thinking, it's my son. You understand?
Maharaj, and to elaborate on that, then Krishna expanded as Vishnu Tattva, but then we see in the Rasadans Krishna expanded himself. Is there a reason why Krishna expanded as Vishnu Tattva rather than himself to assume that same role?
To assume what, say, bro?
The role of the cows and gopas.
Rasa dance is more intimate. And each gopi thought, Krishna is with me. And they don't think Krishna is God. He's the most attractive teenager. We are dancing in the middle of the night with the most beautiful young boy. And he's right next to me. But then Krishna's most confidential girlfriend was getting a little upset. I'm not getting special attention. So she left. All this is for Krishna's pleasure. Anything else? Yes?
Do I need a microphone? Is it on? Oh, it's okay.
You'll belt it out.
Hare Krishna, Devamrita Swami. I was just wondering what you think of family association in Krishna consciousness. Like, is it better to just suck it up when you're at home and practice by yourself, or kind of like leave?
How old are you?
20,
And where are you from?
Auckland.
Everyone's family situation is different. And your level of realization differs. So it's hard to give a one-size-fits-all answer. How attached are you? How capable are you of pushing ahead in your spiritual life with determination? Maybe your family provides no obstacle. Maybe they're all supportive. So many variables would have to be considered. So think what's best for your spiritual life. Pray to Krishna. What's the best thing I can do to advance in spiritual life as the number one priority? And Krishna will give you intelligence. And have some mentors who can help you through this common situation. It's different for everyone. Just like my situation was different than Archita Prabhu's situation and Jai Shila Prabhu's situation. And different than your situation. So have some experienced Vaishnavis who can help you navigate these waters. So you don't act fanatically. Don't act beyond your realization, beyond what you can actually truthfully handle. As I often explain, bhakti is a guidance culture. The more guidance you have, the more wealthy you are. So there's so many devotees who can give you advice. It's nice to have one person that you develop a guiding relationship with. You have that? Okay. So they'll know the details. How attached you are to your family, or maybe you're not attached. How independent you are, maybe you're not independent. Honestly, where are you at? They'll be able to help you according to that.
Thank you.
Yes. For the future, we need 2 mics. One for one side and one for the other. What do you think, Jack? Okay. He does his service back there so quietly. We don't want to take you for granted. We notice you.
Thank you, Gurudev. I was wondering, during the marathon and during the festival, it's easier to be more focused on Krishna consciousness. So during the year, it seems it's easier to lose focus. So I was wondering how to keep that momentum during the year.
Associate with those who have focus. And build your intelligence, your spiritual intelligence, by reading the books. Association is so important. Generally, you become like whom you associate with. Whatever ashram you're in, find examples of those who are successful in that ashram. Hear from them. No need to reinvent the wheel every year. We have successful householders who've been at it for many, many, many years. We have senior brahmacharis who've been at it for many years. Take advice. Kadir Van Devi.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Just wondering, why does Krishna show his opulence at all in Vrindavan pastimes if it's all about Madhurya?
For his own pleasure. Now you see it, now you don't. What was that? What did Krishna just do? Nothing. Like I explained the other day, after the killing of Aghasura, the cowherd boys came back from the forest and they were telling Mother Yashoda, Krishna did this, Krishna did that. And what was Mother Yashoda's reaction? Oh no, we moved from Mahavan to get away from all these disturbances. Now the same stuff is going on. Krishna, don't go to the forest. Stay at home. And what was Krishna's response? This is Kavi Karnapur describes this. Krishna said, Mother, these cowherd boys are lying. I never did any of the adventures they're talking about. He does his human-like pastimes, narrow Lila, in a way that maintains sweetness of human-like affairs, but from time to time he shows his opulences. I'm not an ordinary person. In that way, those who hear about and read about his pastimes won't make the mistake of thinking he's an ordinary human being. So Krishna dances in the middle of the night in the forest. But how does he dance? He's at the side of countless gopis. So what nightclubbing man here could do that? What do you think, Rory? He's losing his nightclub days and nights just by dancing here in Kirtan. Yes, Shastrakrit Prabhu.
Much. Do we keep praying for help, resources to spread Krishna consciousness? Or is it becomes a botheration for Krishna if we just keep praying or let him, like since he knows us and our situation, our desires, let him bless us with whatever we need?
You can pray to Lord Chaitanya, please engage me in your service in the way you see best. Please give me the facilities, the assistance that you see as best. Now, of course, on the most high level, Srila Prabhupada tells us about his argument with Krishna. He never thought to not carry out the order of his Guru Maharaj to spread Krishna consciousness in the Western world. Never thought not to do that. But his plan, as he said, was to become very wealthy and then spread Lord Chaitanya's mission. Because he thought, no one will respect a poor man from India. But if I go to the West with lots of money, people will listen. That was his plan, he said. But he said later, Krishna and he had an argument. He said, I'm going to do it as a rich man. Krishna said, no, you do it as a poor man. And Krishna won the argument. Gora Arti Devi. You can speak loudly, right?
Judgment or a diagnosis, or this one's doing this and that one, or this one's not doing this, and be that it might not be coming with the pure-heartedness of a Vaishnava who may want to rather dialogue and uplift that person and understand why they might be doing something or not doing something and assist them. Does that make sense?
Yes, First of all, a devotee is duty-bound to discriminate. Bhagavatam tells you a devotee has to discriminate between different levels of advancement. General Vaishnava principle is you make friends with those who are on your level, you take wisdom from those who are above your level, and you show mercy to those who are under your level. But that discrimination is not antagonistic. You're under my level. Listen to me, I'm going to give you mercy. And often, those who are above your level, it cannot just be by longevity, how much time they seem to be in the association of devotees. Sometimes that time factor correlates and sometimes it doesn't. Look and see who's attached to glorifying Krishna and spreading Krishna's glories all over the world. Otherwise, their internal consciousness you probably won't be able to detect. But if they're carrying out Lord Chaitanya's order, which is Krishna's order, Yare Deko Tare Kohu Krishna Upadesh. Wherever you go, whomever you meet, teach the science of Krishna. That is the same as Krishna saying, Sarva Dhamma Prityaja, surrender to me. So you look and see who is glorifying Krishna and who is spreading Krishna's glories. Otherwise, what their internal consciousness is, most likely you won't be able to detect. Because especially on the Raga Bhakti platform, spontaneous love and devotion, you externally, as Nectar Devotion teaches you, you act as everyone else, following the rules and regulations of bhakti, but internally, you're thinking something about Vrindavan, Krishna's associates, and following in the footsteps. But you're not going to see that. But you can see who is trying to fulfill Lord Chaitanya's order. That you can see. So yes, a devotee must distinguish and discriminate, but not in a harsh way, in a very gentle way. This requires maturity, doesn't it? So the immature hopefully will become mature. And yes, we have to be tolerant. Let the children grow up. Just like with your little baby, if someone says, "Why are you crying? Why are you crying?" You wouldn't like that. You, the mother, wouldn't like that. It's just a little child. What do you want? So part of tolerance in the society of devotees is dealing with spiritual children. Sometimes they're mischievous. So you have to know what is the right thing. But also, you see, there's one thing, it's one thing to be right. It's another thing to go about being right in the right way. So generally I see that sometimes our devotees, they know what is right, but they go about asserting what is right in the wrong way. So maturity means to be right and know how to go about being right. And yes, you do have to distinguish. There are known factors that you can distinguish by. The easiest ones is the person following their initiation vows? And then is the person offending others? But most importantly, Yare Deko Tare Koho Krishna Upadesh. We're followers of Mahaprabhu. See how the person is always chanting Krishna's glories, Satatam Kirtayanto Mam, Bhagavad Gita, Mamana Bhavamad Bhakto, always thinking of Krishna, and always thinking of Krishna, because we're followers of Lord Chaitanya, means always thinking and acting to spread Krishna's message throughout the world. I hope that helps. You're Gaur Archie, Davy. You can do whatever you like.
In the case where someone might be struggling with their vows, or might not be, or they might choose to do something which is not necessarily what the group is doing, but it might be where they're at, what the situation is. They might feel it's fair, they might have to take some guidance, but other devotees can think, oh, they use their discernment, okay, this person might not be practicing, or they might be, I'm just thinking of this judgmentalism that can come in when someone might not be up to the standard.
Yeah,
To bring them to the standard.
yes, but if you're able to inspire that person, that's the best way. Sometimes, just like when Nitai is naughty, sometimes you don't chastise him immediately, right? Or you do? It varies. That's my point. That's personalism. It varies. So sometimes you let the person be on their level for a while. That takes expert judgment. Or sometimes you say something right away. It varies. Ultimately, everyone's flying their own plane, right? It's hard. You don't know how hard it is for me, for example. I see person's making the same mistakes again and again. I see they're going into a situation in which they'll be bewildered, but it's not all the time I can say something. Everyone has their independence. Bhakti is voluntary. But to handle all that takes maturity. So you can't criticize younger devotees for being discriminative. But you can talk about how they can better be discriminative in a way that's uplifting. And there's always tolerance involved. Just like with your raising Nitai, you don't immediately lash out at him, what are you doing? Right? But not all the time, right? That's my point. It's a difficult service raising biological children and raising spiritual children. Sometimes you have to give someone space. Sometimes parents have to give their children space. You'll find out when your kids become teenagers. So it's a complex question you asked, but you yourself gave the answer in the nutshell. It varies. Now, if we see Gaurarti Devi about to do something wrong, I'll immediately say something. But I may not do that for everyone. It varies. Huh?
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being what you are. Yes. Agahanta Prabhu. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you with the microphone, Nandishwar. Yes.
Just carrying on for that topic, Gurudev, you were saying how seniority doesn't necessarily mean how many years someone has been practicing Krishna consciousness. How do we process as devotees when we see, especially we see in the society there can be, although that is the case, that time is not necessarily a determinant of seniority, that still culturally there is an etiquette there that is observed. And what do we do when we see someone senior in many years that may have a position of leadership or management of others, and we see mistreatment and from this person of other devotees, and it's not obviously always our position to do anything about it. How do we? It's a hard thing to process. How do we keep not become an offensive mentality toward that person, or to talk with others about this person in a derogatory way or in an offensive way?
All right, I have to answer quickly because I just realized we are over time. And you've asked a deep question, so I'm going to answer in a nutshell way. You have to know the difference between your area of concern and your area of influence. That'll save you a lot of hassle. Know that you have your own spiritual life, you can always improve that. If you have the circle of influence that you can help rectify a situation, you can try to do that. So there's a difference between your circle of concern and your circle of influence. One of the few good things that my father told me was, son, choose your battles. Our main battle is our own spiritual development. But if you've got the circle of influence to help correct situations, then okay. But there'll be many times when you don't have that circle of influence. There'll be many times when I don't have that circle of influence. And tolerance is extremely required. So you have to know when to take initiative and when not to. It's always good to get some guidance about that. Doesn't mean you have to blindfold yourself, but still recognize what you yourself can actually do about the situation. So we'll have more time for questions tomorrow. But I'm sorry for taking you 10 minutes beyond our cutoff time, which postpones breakfast. So I will probably hear from, oh, she's already looking at me. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.